Are boundaries ultimatums? I want to know your thoughts. I'm betting if you're here, a lot of you feel like maybe boundaries are ultimatums. And I have been working with a few of my clients. I am the coach who really helps you put some boundaries in place in your life because boundaries protect your inner peace. Boundaries are an act of love. Boundaries are not ultimatums, but you can put an intention behind it that may be an ultimatum. And that is not what we are here to do. So I have a few people who, let's talk about the relationship side first. I want to talk about this because I feel like this is something that a lot of us experience. When we met our partner, when you met your husband, when you came into this relationship, you come in and you meet each other and you connect because your puzzle pieces, if you think about yourself as puzzle pieces, your puzzle pieces fit together in such a way that continues the cycle of a pattern that you learned in childhood. So maybe in childhood, I'll use myself for an example. I grew up in a very chaotic home. I grew up in a home where I was parentified, emotionally immature adults, and I learned to manage emotions well. Not only my emotions, but everyone else's emotions. So if I was the good girl and if I just kept my head down and didn't speak up and didn't have any needs and just kept everybody else happy, then I was safe. And my husband grew up in a home where he was taught that the man financially provides and the wife, which is really funny because his mom actually went back to work full time when he started kindergarten, but she also took care of the house, took care of the laundry, took care of the cooking the meals, took care of the kids, did everything else. And I feel like this kind of not only stems from like the way that we were conditioned from generations past, right? So like our grandparents, what were their relationships like, and that's what our parents learned. But also like the religion I was raised in kind of taught very much the same thing. And very much that like the man is the provider, he is the head of the household, the woman is the nurturer and the caregiver, and like it's your duty to multiply and replenish the earth and like all of these things. And so when we meet a partner, we're fitting these puzzle pieces together. And so for me, the puzzle piece was my mom had two marriages, they both kind of sucked, and she was a single mom for many years once her and my stepdad got divorced. And so I saw kind of both sides, but what I saw was like women just get shit done. They just take care of it. And so if there's a problem, we fix it. And so I became very much this people pleasing problem solver. And my husband, he was taking care of his whole life. So he needed somebody who would take care of and solve his problems to keep him comfortable. That was me. Like, that is how our puzzle pieces fit it together. Several years into our marriage, I was like, no, this isn't working. Like, this freaking sucks. And I was so resentful toward him because I was like, I'm at home doing the laundry, making sure the bills are paid, cooking all the meals, cleaning the house, getting the kids to activities, taking care of everything else. And he comes home and he's the fun dad. And I am the mom who was at home disciplining the kids all day and trying to get them to do their shit and all of this, right? So you see where this goes. And maybe you're in this right now, but it was super frustrating. And as I started on like my personal growth, personal development journey, that one day I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This isn't what I signed up for. I just knew deep down, I just knew this was not the life that I had dreamed of ever since I was a little girl. I just knew there was more. And so I started to go on this personal growth, personal development journey. But it really wasn't until probably the past 18 months now that I went really heavy on the boundaries. And I didn't realize I had set boundaries in the past, especially with my kids. Like, okay, the boundary would be this is mom's office. So you have certain toys that you can play with in here, but they don't leave the office. That was when my kids were little. And then as they got older, okay, if mommy's door's closed, you please don't come in my office. I'm probably on a call or like recording. So make sure that you stay out there for just a little bit longer, or like whatever it is, right? I was setting boundaries, not necessarily calling them boundaries, but Then I started to recognize other areas of my life that were just feeling pretty shitty. And I was like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to deal with this. I felt so alone in my own home. I felt like the naggy mom. I was like, I just want somebody to freaking help me. And I just want my husband to like step up, and why can't he do some housework? But I also felt really scared because when we come into these relationships, we also have these invisible contracts. And these contracts are our beliefs and our thoughts around what a husband should be, what a wife should be, what a mom should be, what a relationship should look like. And we kind of have this idea in our head when we come into it based on our experiences growing up as a child. And so, do you see how a lot of the times our patterns from the past continue into adulthood until we see and recognize and choose to change them? And so this is where we get to break cycles of abuse, patterns that of the unbalanced, right? We as women have just always been taught to carry this extra invisible load because that's what we saw growing up. And so we bring that into the relationship, and then we hit 5 years into our marriage and we're like, this feels like shit. I'm not doing this anymore. And then we have to start to navigate a new way of being. And this is where I found myself a couple of years ago. As like, again, there's a significant imbalance here. My husband was gone hunting all the time. I was at home doing all the things, keeping everything running, and I was like done with it. But I also felt really scared to mention anything to my husband. I mentioned stuff to him years ago, many years ago. I mentioned stuff to him, but I would do it in like a passive aggressive way. So it wasn't super healthy. I would be like, I'd love to see the day like you vacuumed a house, or if you act like this person, like if you were like her husband, I don't know if I could handle that. Like I would just kind of make these comments that weren't super clear. They were so passive aggressive, and he was like, "What do you want me to do with this?" I never stated a need. I was just like, "I can't do that." I never said, "Hey, I actually need you to like show up with me, and can you take some of this over?" Because I didn't feel like I could have needs. And I felt really selfish. I felt a little guilty. Like, well, he goes to work all day. Like, why, who am I to think that maybe he should come home and like help around the house? I had all these thoughts because, again, this was my invisible contract running in the back of my mind. And so I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about the invisible contract that maybe you have written for yourself, for not only you as a mom, but as an individual. So for yourself, what is that contract? For me, it was like, oh, myself goes out the window because I now have kids and I got pregnant at 18. So myself went out the window many years ago. And then I was having to renegotiate the contract that I had made with myself around throwing me out the window. I would abandon myself to keep everybody else comfortable. That was the pattern I learned in childhood because that's how I stayed safe. But now, when we jump into these new relationships, because it feels familiar to our body, we attach the same behavior to the next closest person within our home. So we go from parent figure, I never lived on my own. And I don't think it matters if you lived on your own or not, because maybe if you've had roommates, you probably created similar patterns with them, and then got into a marriage where you picked up those suitcases again, the suitcases full of toddlers, and you brought them into your marriage because that's how your puzzle pieces fit together, because you're continuing that same pattern. Now we want to break the pattern. And it feels really scary. And our body freaks out a little bit. So, like, logically, we're like, this doesn't feel good. Can something change? And we start to kind of question, can something change? And then it's like, well, but I don't dare say it to him. What if he gets mad? What if, he believes that I should just do it all? Then what? Then what am I going to do? And so these are like the mind games that I kind of the voices I had in my head, the parts of me that were like, I don't know if I can say that to him. Like, I don't know if I can have needs. That might be asking too much. Um, Anytime we really asked for much growing up, we kind of had to hear about all of the shit that this person had to go through, and they also like weren't willing. And so, do you see how like we definitely pick these up as children. And then these same child parts are in us because they're unhealed. And so they don't realize that I'm 36 years old, right? They don't realize that I am no longer a little girl because this situation feels familiar to the body, and familiar equals safe. So if we just continue this pattern of self abandonment, of keeping everybody else happy, then we're going to be safe. Who gives a shit about your feelings, right? Who gives a shit about your emotions? And so that's where this starts to come in, and we get to start to learn to set boundaries, and we get to start to make ourselves feel a little bit safer around it. And so the first step is just identifying, like, where in your life is feeling a little shitty right now, and you know you need a boundary, but you're just not sure where to start, or you're afraid to like ask your husband for help. I am here to tell you that you get to have help, and you get to let him know that you're struggling. You're struggling. And where can he step up is like the next thing that you get to kind of identify is like where could you insert him for a little support, and then ask him if he's willing. And I think that once you get over that hurdle, I genuinely feel like most of us here who are on this path of bettering ourselves actually have really good partners, really good men in our lives. And they truly do want to help us, but they don't know that we're struggling. When I mentioned it to my husband, he was like, I had no idea you were struggling with this. And so I think once we get past that fear and we're able to open up to them, it then opens Pandora's box. You are going to look around and you're going to see everywhere in your life that you really want a boundary in place. And we're going to start small. So I just want you to identify an area that you're struggling. And then I want you to decide, like, where could I put a boundary in place? How could I try this? How could I? And just kind of ask. Just ask for it. I used to be scared if I forgot. There was one time I remember, and this is when I was like at the very beginning of my therapy journey about 18 months ago with this new therapist that I have, that she is so good. But I had to leave for the day, and I forgot to put dinner in the crock pot. I had all the ingredients sitting on the counter and I just forgot to put it in the crock pot. And I was so scared to text him and ask if he could do it. This is where I began. And he has never given me any reason to fear him, he's never exploded on me. He's never gotten mad at me for asking for something. And it was the learned behavior in my childhood because the adults in my childhood did. There was explosiveness, emotional, wow, dysfunction, like all over. I never knew. I never knew. So I didn't dare ask. And so I would start small and I would start to set these little boundaries, of like, again, they have their own autonomy, right? They have their own ability to make their decisions. They can tell us no. And then we get to find a way to get our boundaries met. There's so much like nuance in here. I wish I could teach it all on a podcast. I have a course for this. I have a boundary mastery course if you're interested. It is $97 and you can come in and I'm going to walk you through the process. But as you start to like put these in place, I always say start small. And so starting small, it would just be little things that I would ask. And then I would have to realize, like, no matter how he responded, one, you still get to have your boundary met. Two, he also has little toddlers. So now we're dealing with all of our suitcases of toddlers and trying to navigate how this looks and how this is going to work and how we're going to fit together. And so a lot of times for my husband, when his little toddlers would show up, it would be like, he's like, well, that's an ultimatum. So I would set, there was this one time, I'll give you the example where he thought it was the ultimatum, is I was like, if we are in the same place in 1 year from now, like I'm out. I am out because I didn't love where our relationship was at. I didn't hate it. Like our relationship has never been like awful. It has been very imbalanced, and he never asked me to like do any of that stuff and to make him comfy and to take care of him. He never asked me. It was just these invisible contracts that we came into the relationship with. And so I just took it upon myself to do these things. And then we got super comfortable with that way of being until one day I was not. And it wasn't one day, right? We know that all built up. But then we're having this conversation and he was like, wow, like that really sounds like an ultimatum. And I was like, listen, if we are living the exact same life, exact same house, exact same circumstances, all of it, in 1 year from now, would you be happy? Would you be like so excited? And he was like, oh, I guess not. I was like, okay. And that was kind of the start of our journey on our relationship and re-navigating the invisible contract that we had both written and figuring out how we were going to do things differently. And so I just want you to know, like, you don't have to start super small. Don't make passive aggressive comments. They're not helpful. Now we have this joke that if I'm setting boundaries or whatever, he's like, as long as you don't make any more passive aggressive comments. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so men like us to be direct. They are very logical thinkers. And if yours is like mine, he's a very avoidant type. So they don't want to talk about the hard things. They don't want to face their emotions. And they really hate when we hold them accountable to things. And I am doing all of these things right now. And so it's just been really fun to see how our puzzle pieces fit differently together. And so I want you to just recognize that as you're thinking about setting boundaries and you're starting small and you're looking at the areas that you're struggling with in the house that you would love more support from your partner on, I want you to just really think about the intention that you're bringing into setting this boundary. Because we don't want to set boundaries, can be ultimatums if you're setting it to control. We do not want to control. So we don't want to come into it and be like, well, do this or else, right? I need you to do this or else this. If your intention behind that is like to control, then it's not a healthy boundary. So for me, I'll give you another example of a healthy boundary. When we were getting ready to sell our house, the sprinkler system needed a new valve put on it. I obviously did not know how, nor would anybody want me putting a new valve on it. And my husband kept saying, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. But he wasn't doing it. And so I was able to put a boundary in place and just be like, okay, listen, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. If this isn't done in 2 weeks, then I'm just going to hire somebody to come in and do it. And that was a way that, one, I knew my need would get met because it was either my husband or it was going to be the sprinkler guy that I called to come in and fix it. And two, it still gave my husband the ability to be like, you know what? I have so much going on right now. I don't have time. Just pay somebody to come and do it. And so I knew the need would get met. And you get to have this same thing. This could be with watching your kids. Like, I had one client whose husband was just, he just like had this belief that she was supposed to be home with the kids 24/7 and that was her job. And when she finally went to him and was like, okay, like I'm starting to help you with your business and I'm starting to like work a little bit more, I can't do it all. Either you watch the kids while I go to meetings once a week, or I'm going to have to hire somebody to come in so that I can actually get shit done. And so I want you to start to look at it that way. It's like, how can I get this need met? And know that the intention behind it, it's going to feel like an ultimatum to their toddler parts, but I want you to look at it also as an invitation for them to step up, an invitation for them to take a seat at your table, and they can choose whether to eat or not. But if they choose not to eat, then this is where that road leads. Because myself personally, I am not going to live a life where I take care of every single thing and keep you just super cozy and comfortable for the rest of your life. I want a partner in my home, and that is what I have created. And he was willing to step up. He's doing the work. He's really responding to the boundaries I set in place. Like this morning, I was kind of running around like, hey, did you guys get your stuff done? Like my kids. And I have one little boy who just really struggles with focus. We're trying to figure out what to do to help him. But I was just kind of reminding him, and my husband looks at me and he's like, babe, I got it this morning. I got it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, it feels so good to not be so alone. And it doesn't take forever to create it. And that is what I want you to understand. So if you are ready to start setting boundaries in your life, and you have maybe had this thought that boundaries are ultimatums and that they are meant to control people, I hope, one, that I've shifted that a little bit for you. And two, I am here to help you step in. I have a course, it's called Boundary Mastery. It is all about every step of the way, all the thoughts and feelings that might come up for you. It's how to put the boundaries in place, because if you don't have boundaries, you're not in control of your life. If you have zero boundaries, then your life is running by everyone else's expectations, what your husband expects of you and maybe not expects of you, but you don't know because there hasn't been a conversation. There's been what maybe your parents or your mom expects of you and how she thinks you should show up as a mom. And so you're just continuing the tradition of showing up as a mom the exact same way she did, and it feels really shitty to you, and you're like getting resentful toward the people that you love. We don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to do that anymore. It is time to stop living by the expectations of others. It is time to stop shoulding all over yourself. And you're here obviously because you knew the title of this podcast episode. You need some boundaries in your life. You want to learn how to say no in a very healthy way. You want to learn how to get the support that you need within your home in a way that doesn't leave you feeling like the naggy mom, that doesn't leave you feel like wondering if you are the only one who cares if the house is clean. That when one of your kids asks for a glass of milk at dinner, maybe your husband jumps up instead and tries to get there faster than you do. Like, you get the support that you need when you have boundaries in place. And it is time for you to stop living by everyone else's expectations and start living life for you, and know that you get to have a sense of self and be a really incredible mom and be a wife. You are not just a mom. You are a woman, you are an individual, and you chose to be a mom. And so now you get to decide what that looks like. And that is what this course helps you do. So if this feels right for you, then you can jump in. I will drop the link in the show notes below, and I will talk to you next time.